Napster changed music forever, then disappeared overnight. In 1999, music was expensive, inconvenient, and controlled by a handful of corporate gatekeepers. A single CD cost $20. Radio stations played the same 30 songs on repeat. And if you wanted to hear that obscure B-side track or discover new artists, you were out of luck unless you had deep pockets and infinite patience. Then an 18-year-old college dropout named Sean Fanning changed everything with 60,000 lines of code that would simultaneously save and destroy the music industry. His creation was called Napster, and in just 2 years, it would introduce 100 million people to the future of music consumption before being obliterated by the very industry it tried to revolutionize. This is the story of the app that taught the world to pirate music, died in court, but left behind DNA that lives in every streaming service you use today. Sean Fanning wasn't trying to start a revolution when he began coding Napster in his Northeastern University dorm room in early 1999. He was just frustrated. His roommate kept complaining about broken links when trying to download MP3 files from sketchy websites, and Fanning thought there had to be a better way. The 18-year-old had been programming since he was 14 and had already built several successful IRC bots and chat programs. His solution was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of relying on centralized servers that could go down or get overloaded, why not create a network where users could share files directly with each other? He combined the words Napster, his nickname from his nappy hair, with the concept of peer-to-peer file sharing, and began building what would become the most revolutionary music platform ever created. By May 1999, after dropping out of college and moving back to Massachusetts, Fanning had created a working prototype that could index and search MP3 files across thousands of connected computers. He had no idea he was about to start the first digital music war. The technology behind Napster was revolutionary, combining 3 existing concepts in a way no one had attempted before. First, it used peer-to-peer networking, allowing users to connect directly to each other's computers rather than downloading from a central server. Second, it created a centralized index of available files, so users could search across the entire network instantly. Third, it made the entire process incredibly user-friendly with a simple interface that looked like any other Windows application. When you open Napster, you could type in any song title, artist name, or album and see dozens or hundreds of results from other users' hard drives. Click on one, and the file would download directly from their computer to yours. The genius was in the hybrid approach. Centralized searching with decentralized file sharing. This meant Napster could help you find anything without actually hosting the files themselves. Or so they thought. This technical distinction would later prove to be both their legal defense and their ultimate downfall, as courts would rule that facilitating piracy was just as illegal as hosting pirated content directly. Word spread about Napster like wildfire across college campuses, where students had fast internet connections and endless appetites for free music. Within 6 months of its June 1999 launch, Napster had attracted over 4 million registered users. By February 2001, the service peaked at over 70 million users worldwide, making it one of the fastest-growing applications in internet history. Users were downloading over 2.5 billion files per month, representing roughly 800,000 simultaneous file transfers at any given moment. The numbers were staggering. Napster accounted for over 60% of all internet traffic at some universities, forcing IT departments to implement bandwidth restrictions just to keep their networks functional. Students would leave their computers running 24 hours a day, sharing their entire music collections with strangers around the world. The platform became more than just a file-sharing service. It was a cultural phenomenon that introduced people to music they never would have discovered otherwise. Users would browse each other's shared folders, discovering new artists, rare live recordings, and international music that had never been distributed in their countries. For the first time in history, the entire world's music catalog was available instantly, for free, to anyone with an internet connection. The record industry's response was swift and merciless. In December 1999, just 6 months after Napster's launch, the Recording Industry Association of America filed a lawsuit alleging massive copyright infringement. The RIAA represented major labels including Sony, Warner, Universal, BMG, and EMI, who collectively controlled over 80% of the global music market. Their argument was simple. Napster was facilitating the theft of copyrighted material on an unprecedented scale, causing billions of dollars in lost revenue. They pointed to internal emails where Napster executives discussed the platform's use for downloading copyrighted music and argued that the company was built specifically to enable piracy. The lawsuit sought both monetary damages and an injunction to shut down the service entirely. Napster's defense team, led by prominent attorney David Boies, argued that the company was protected by the same safe harbor provisions that protected internet service providers from liability for their users' actions. They claimed Napster was simply providing technology, like a copy machine or VCR, and couldn't be held responsible for how people used it. They also argued that many uses of Napster were legal, including sharing original compositions, promotional materials, and music explicitly released for free distribution by artists. The case would become one of the most important copyright battles of the digital age. As the legal battle intensified, Napster attracted unlikely allies from within the music industry itself. Several prominent artists, including Radiohead, Limp Bizkit, and Public Enemy, defended the platform and even used it to distribute their own music directly to fans. Radiohead's Tom York famously said that Napster was the most exciting thing to happen to music distribution in years, and predicted that it would help artists reach audiences without record label interference. The band Metallica initially sued Napster after discovering that their unreleased song I Disappear was being widely shared on the platform, but later admitted they were primarily upset about the leak, not the technology itself. Many independent artists embraced Napster as a way to bypass the traditional gatekeepers and connect directly with listeners. Some studies suggested that Napster actually increased music sales by helping people discover new artists, though the record industry disputed these findings. The platform also had unexpected benefits for music preservation, as users shared rare recordings, out-of-print albums, and live performances that were otherwise impossible to find. In many ways, Napster created the first comprehensive digital music library, democratizing access to musical culture in ways the industry had never imagined. The technical challenges of running Napster were as unprecedented as its cultural impact. At its peak, the service required massive server farms to handle the centralized index of available files across millions of users' computers. The company burned through venture capital funding to maintain infrastructure capable of processing hundreds of thousands of search queries per minute and maintaining real-time connections to users around the world. Engineering challenges included preventing system crashes when popular files were requested by thousands of users simultaneously, managing the constant turnover as users came online and went offline, and dealing with the massive bandwidth costs of facilitating billions of file transfers. The company also had to combat increasingly sophisticated attempts by record labels to flood the network with fake files, corrupted downloads, and automated programs designed to disrupt service. Some labels hired companies to upload thousands of dummy files with popular song names that would waste users' time and bandwidth. Despite these challenges, Napster's peer-to-peer architecture proved remarkably resilient, continuing to function even when parts of the central infrastructure were compromised. The technical lessons learned from scaling Napster would later influence the development of legitimate streaming services, social networks, and cloud computing platforms. The beginning of the end came on February 12, 2001, when the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit ruled that Napster had to stop facilitating the sharing of copyrighted material. The court rejected Napster's arguments about safe harbor protections and fair use, ruling that the company had knowledge of widespread copyright infringement and failed to take adequate steps to prevent it. The judges were particularly critical of Napster's centralized index system, arguing that the company was not merely providing neutral technology, but was actively facilitating piracy by helping users locate copyrighted files. The ruling required Napster to remove copyrighted material from its network within 72 hours or face shutdown. The company immediately began implementing filtering systems to block searches for copyrighted songs, but the task proved nearly impossible. Users quickly learned to misspell artist names, use alternate titles, or add extra characters to bypass the filters. The court responded by ordering increasingly strict compliance measures, eventually requiring Napster to block any file that might be copyrighted unless they had explicit permission from the rights holders. By summer 2001, the filtering had become so aggressive that the service was essentially unusable, blocking legitimate files while still failing to eliminate all copyrighted content. Despite desperate attempts to negotiate licensing deals with record labels and transform into a legitimate streaming service, Napster filed for bankruptcy in June 2002 and officially shut down its file-sharing network on July 11, 2001. The company had burned through over $85 million in venture capital funding while facing over $26 billion in potential copyright damages. Attempts to relaunch as a subscription service failed to attract the massive user base that had made the original Napster culturally significant. The brand was eventually sold to Roxio for $5 million, then to Best Buy, and finally to Rhapsody. But none of these incarnations recaptured the revolutionary spirit of the original. Most of Napster's original team scattered to other technology companies, taking their expertise in large-scale distributed systems to help build the next generation of internet services. Sean Fanning went on to found several other companies, including Snowcap, a digital rights management service that attempted to help artists monetize file sharing. The original Napster's death was swift and final, but its influence on digital culture was just beginning. The true measure of Napster's success isn't found in its brief lifespan, but in how fundamentally it changed expectations about music consumption and distribution. Every major streaming service today, from Spotify to Apple Music to YouTube Music, uses concepts pioneered by Napster: instant access to vast catalogs, user-generated playlists, social sharing features, and algorithmic discovery based on listening habits. The idea that you should be able to access any song ever recorded instantly for a low monthly fee was first proven possible by Napster's peer-to-peer network. The service also established user behaviors that persist today: binge listening to entire discographies, creating massive personal libraries, and discovering music through social recommendations rather than radio or record store clerks. Even the technical infrastructure of modern streaming borrows from Napster's innovations in distributed computing, real-time search, and handling millions of concurrent users. The record industry ultimately adopted many of Napster's features while maintaining control over licensing and monetization. Steve Jobs explicitly credited Napster with proving consumer demand for digital music when he launched iTunes in 2003, saying that the service had opened the world's eyes to the possibilities of digital distribution. Today's music streaming industry generates over $20 billion annually, built on the foundation that Napster established over 2 decades ago. Napster's legacy extends far beyond music into the fundamental architecture of the modern internet. The peer-to-peer principles it popularized influenced everything from BitTorrent file sharing to blockchain cryptocurrencies to content delivery networks that power Netflix and YouTube. The legal precedents established in the Napster case shaped how courts approach technology companies that enable user-generated content, influencing landmark cases involving Google, Facebook, and other platforms. The service also demonstrated both the power and vulnerability of centralized systems, lessons that inform the development of more resilient distributed networks. Perhaps most importantly, Napster proved that users would abandon piracy for legal alternatives if those alternatives were convenient, comprehensive, and reasonably priced. This insight drove the creation of iTunes, Spotify, and the entire legitimate digital media ecosystem. The app that taught the world to pirate music ultimately taught the music industry how to compete with piracy. In 60,000 lines of code and 2 years of operation, Napster compressed what might have been decades of industry evolution into a single revolutionary moment. It died in court, but its DNA lives in every streaming service, every digital marketplace, and every app that gives you instant access to the world's information. Napster didn't just change music forever, it changed how we think about ownership, access, and the relationship between technology and culture in the digital age.